The symbol of the cross has sanctified every corner of the earth for centuries. Today the Church celebrates the exaltation of the Holy Cross. What does this celebration mean?
La Chiesa non esalta la croce intesa come strumento di sofferenza, di morte.
The Church does not glorify the cross as an instrument of suffering, death, and unjust condemnation. It glorifies the Holy Cross, that is, the cross of Jesus, which has become an instrument of life. St. Paul teaches us that we cannot rejoice in anything other than the cross of Jesus, because it is precisely through this voluntary sacrifice on the cross that Jesus freed us from the slavery of sin and death. By offering his life on the cross, Jesus revealed to us the fullness of the Father's love. By standing under the cross, St. John learned that God is love, and he tells us so in his letters. Under the cross, the centurion understood that Jesus is the Son of God. Every time we raise our eyes to the crucified one, we are invited to renew our faith and our joy of belonging to the Lord, affirming with wonder, "To this extent my Lord has loved me. He gave his life for me, a poor sinner." Only the love of Jesus is truly trustworthy, and the signs of the passion that remain even in his risen body are an everlasting testimony of this.
Sorto ne sono una testimonianza perenne.
The Church's liturgy relates the cross of Jesus to the serpent that Moses lifted up.
È stato Gesù stesso a leggere il suo essere innalzato sulla croce in riferimento all'antico serpente, quel serpente che Mosè innalzò.
It was Jesus himself who read his being lifted up on the cross in reference to the ancient serpent, which Moses lifted up in the desert to save the Israelites from the serpent's poison. What gave healing to the people who had forgotten God and his faithfulness was not a piece of bronze, however, but obedience to the Lord's command. The serpent was raised on a pole. To look at it, it was necessary to raise one's eyes to heaven, to God, remembering that life and salvation came only from him. How urgent it is for us too, as we travel through the tangles of history, often marked by fatigue and pain, to remember that our only hope comes from the salvation that the Lord obtained for us on the cross. Celebrating the Holy Cross is a reminder of the Lord's faithfulness and love. Only a faith rich in the memory of the Lord's great works for us frees us from the seductions of sin and the presumption of being sufficient for ourselves. The liturgy of the Church makes present and alive the events of our salvation. The sacraments of the Church are the effective instruments through which God's grace reaches us and saves us. The Franciscan community of Jerusalem, together with a local Christian community, celebrated on the 14th of September the solemnity of the Exaltation of the Holy Cross in the Chapel of Calvary, the place where Jesus was crucified. Dobromir Yatsal, vicar of the Custody of the Holy Land, presided over the celebration. In his homily he stressed that it is here, in front of the cross of Jesus, that communication is established between heaven and earth, between God who saves and man in need of salvation. Recognizing him as King means above all recognizing him as the one who shows us the way. It means accepting his word day after day as a valid and unique criterion for our lives. After the celebration of the Eucharist, everyone took part in the procession. It passed by the wayside shrine of the Holy Sepulchre to finally reach the altar dedicated to Mary Magdalene's encounter with the risen Jesus, where the relic of the cross was venerated by the faithful. Brother Dobromir mentions three important aspects of this celebration.
Il primo che il crocifisso con le sue braccia aperte accoglie tutti, estende le sue braccia su tutti.
The first is the crucified one, who with his open arms welcomes everyone. He extends his arms over everyone, and then in the silence of the cross, because Jesus on the cross hardly speaks, he addresses everyone. To those who have the courage to follow him, he assures the strength they can draw from the mystery of the cross. To those who are weak, those who still have difficulties, or those who do not yet have the courage to follow Jesus, he tells them to renew their lives. He also speaks to those who are preparing to pass on to the Father's house. Jesus accompanies them with his love and with the hope that after suffering comes the resurrection and thus the arrival at the Father's house.
Segue la risurrezione e quindi l'arrivo alla casa del Padre.
Brother Dobromir also assured the commitment of the Franciscan community to pray in the holy places.
Ogni giorno, giorno dopo giorno, bisogna attingere dal mistero della croce la forza che può accompagnare.
Every day, day after day, we need to draw from the mystery of the cross the strength that can accompany each person and especially those who suffer. At this moment, the world is crushed by the suffering of the pandemic, by the suffering of loneliness. Here, it is the love of God that we can draw from the cross of Christ that can give us the strength to overcome these difficult moments, to follow our hope, and in the future to feel the joy of healing and change.
Anche di sentire la gioia della guarigione e del cambiamento.
Grazie mille, buona festa.
Buona festa a tutti.